Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Goosebumps HorrorTown review for Event 16. It came from the internet. This is going to be a rather interesting one because this marks the second anniversary, or the second year. Like, it's been going on for 2 years now, and hopefully more. It'll make my content worth better. But this time I'm going to be a little bit trying something new out, and it might help for future references and all that stuff. So let's go ahead and just start it off with what this event's all about. The town has cleaned up Dawes' mess, and a new resident has decided to turn the promenade into a new futuristic plaza. Dr. Bronstien and his students, Mark and Rachel, are also promoting a new game, Spider, which Eric and Dustin are excited to experience. What the town doesn't know is what the true doctor has in store for everyone. With the help of an unlikely source, the webs of complex coding and hacking will bring his most interesting creation to life: revenge. The first thing to note is that this is the first 90s internet event. It's a futuristic version, Neo, I don't know what you call it, but it's like a old future Neo-esque type of deal. And it's also the game's second anniversary. This is based off of the same book of the same name. It came from the internet. This actually is the first update that I would say is done fully outside of the Pixowl offices due to, well, I can't say, but you can see the name there. All I need to do is simply say it's the current lockdown pandemic that we're facing. And this event started back May 7th and ended June 2nd at 8 p.m. EDT. So, is the new plaza one small step for redemption? Or will this be another sticky web of terror of technology? Well, let's find out. Let's go into the positives first before we dive into what made this game a bit technical. The first thing to note is Spider and the characters involved in this story. I personally did like the fact of what they did with the designs of both Dr. Bronstien, Mark, Rachel, as well as Spider, the web crawler, because this book was certainly an interesting take. It's bizarre, like most of RL's books, but it's nice to see them try to kind of come out with these characters into a cohesive story. I'll go more in depth with them in the next few bits. The items for this update are, to put it bluntly, awesome to grab, both new and old. It's nice to see the designs of these to be a little bit more laid out. I also want to commend the fact that the coin range this time around was a little bit weird at first, but it seems like they balanced it out. So although you're getting less of the coins or the event currency, it was like easable enough to kind of like balance it compared to how it was back in the dark ages, let's call it that, back in August of 2019. The other thing I will note is that I do like the fact that they did bring back Mr. Fleshman as well as the alien invaders, especially with his unique item, which is this weird alien prism. This was one of those weird, interesting items to have, and the fact that you're able to grab this thing through freemium currency is somewhat of a cool thing to kind of have display in your town. It doesn't really do anything, but hey, when they give you some cool items, why not? I'm a bit of a sucker for the fact that this is a bit of a 90s and aesthetic neon type of deal, plus the fact that the quest lines this time around were a lot more juicier and beefier, meaning that there was a lot more to them than how we've seen last time. I'm starting to see that we're starting to get a little bit more content, and that might have something to do with the fact of with something I might talk about in the future, but for now it is decent enough that it keeps us entertained and busy for the long haul. The animations team did a good job when it comes to some of these characters. What's new for this update, the newer characters, of course, let's say like Bronstien, Eric, as well as the actual monsters this time around, were really nice to have them be animate and all that. The designs were really awesome to see kind of around, but that's just my kind of take of them. I will say that I do like how they kind of make animations for some of the normal characters like Eric, Dustin, and Marty. I believe those are the only ones that I can think of on the top of my head that are actually new. There are a bit of the old freemium ones. But regardless, the fact that the way they kind of designed themselves there, good job. Last but not least, let's give an appreciation for the fact that Rachel was available for free players. Yeah, she was a little bit of the higher price in the fact of having be 1,000 of the event currency. But it is nice to have a walk-around character that isn't like the other two characters, the animals that do absolutely nothing. She does have an animation. Her questline was actually decent enough when it comes to explaining her story, and it's kind of nice that you start a book off a bit of the little bit there, but again, I guess we'll talk about the book in this next part coming up here. So despite some of the more grounding, brighter achievements that this event has, we're going to take a look into the more darker and a bit more depraved with some of the technical errors that came with this event. Now, despite me saying the new characters were nice to see, I will complain that some of them, not all, but some of them should have been fleshed out a little bit more. This might be due to the fact that Rachel didn't have much when it comes to the animations, and some of the dialogue exchange was going to be a bit more weird. But that in itself is what is to be seen. Speaking of, oh boy, the quality of this is a bit wonky to say the least. Now, I could give the excuse that this might be the first time they've done something like this at home, so there was a bit of miscommunications. It was pretty apparent when you saw there was no logo for this event, that there was no real communications, and the fact that the story was all over the place. That had something to do with the fact that, like I stated in part 4, the fact that I kind of helped a bit when it came to some of the dialogue, but then had someone else, mostly who I would suspect to be main speaking as Spanish and English being a second language, had a bit of a weird grammar translation issue that kind of just felt jumbled in a way. It was somewhat understandable, like in the sense that you can understand what was going on with the story, but at the same time you were like confused at the same time, and it was just my brain. Oh god. The items in this game for crafting is a bit wonky in some locations. Namely, it has something to do with the fact of some of the items required is with scenes that unfortunately had to use some of the worst drops that we got. These caused the gnomes, the graveyard again, and the dog. But if you've played this game for a while, you would know, or if you've actually invested in some of this stuff, then you would be a little bit easy to say that you're fine. But unfortunately, when it comes to one particular item, the reggae tapes, unfortunately there's no characters to drop that, so the only way that you can get it is through the gnome drop rates, and even if you spend $1, the drops is 70%, which isn't even good. So you find that it's more cheaper just to buy the items straight outright, as I did with this event. And oh boy, maybe in the future to have a bit more balance. I will give them credit where they decided to give us 5 normal items, so it makes it a little bit more unique and more makes more characters a little bit more useful. But at the same time, it's a little bit like should have been improved. If you're going to use existing areas, do it what you did with like the novelty shop and change it and fix the drop rates altogether. No one wants to spend money on these characters, okay? Speaking of scene, let's talk about the Internet Cafe. Now, as I expected and I talked about during my playthrough, the problem here was the fact that the Rachel, Mark, and Dr. Bronstiens were supposed to be the spawn people on this thing. But as we suspected that both Mark and Bronstien were unique characters, aka, which I'm going to briefly talk about in the... Let's just say that the fact that that happened, they decided to change pace and now made Mark only exclusive. The Rachel is no longer there, so you can just spawn this thing out of nowhere. And unfortunately, the premium character, aka the spider character, you have to summon them with $5. And I get it because it's a bigger character, it's supposed to be beefy, but no one likes to spend the Goosebucks on such an item like that, especially since the Goosebucks themselves are getting a little bit harder to kind of come by. Now, granted, if you played through the events, you do get currency, so I will give them that, and other stuff too, but a lot of people, especially when it comes to like watching videos or ads or stuff like that, it's not there, so people get frustrated. And aren't you surprised the last one to get talked about is, well, what do you expect? Both Mark and Bronstien being exclusives. This is now the second time that's been going on like this, and I have a feeling that this is going to continue. I'm going to be taking a look into the actual how much this made, but this seems like they're going with the Snoopy's Town Tale dilemma, where you're going to unique special characters only available through a bundle pack to make you buy it, and afterwards, if you don't want the character but you want it later on, then they'll be available after the event's over. So basically, when they're no longer of use, then that's when you can get it. It's a bit of a weird tactic, and I think there is something greater coming to the game that will hopefully make this weird shift a bit more better, and I am debating whether or not to talk more about this dilemma in a separate video, but maybe we can discuss that in a later date. But needless to say, yeah, these two characters, especially with Bronstien, the advantage they give you is just so... it gives a wrong message, especially with Andy. She was exclusive last time, and she helped a big way. And I get it, you want to reward people for investing, but at the same time, that kind of gives a wrong message when other people can't get access to it. You're kind of limiting off people when it comes to payment methods here. If they can fix a way to kind of have this be a balancing act, then I would appreciate it more. But as we can stand, because of this aspect, it is where it is now. Now overall, this is what the end result looked like for my review card. As you can see, it's a little bit mixed on both cases, which probably gives a good reasoning on what will happen next. Because the reasoning of this is now it's in the middle of this whole ordeal. Out of all the 16, is now in the middle place, and I'm going to explain why that is. So let's go ahead and talk about what this event did better at. So, where did it get placed? Above? Well, that would be last year's That's No Easter Bunny event. The reason why this ended up surpassing this one has something to do with the fact that the main theming and content were interesting and unique to be a bit better in the Easter update content. Not saying the Easter content wasn't as terrible as it was, but it was a repeated event that we've seen before. A lot of people didn't like the Easter aesthetics, and for some people they argue it may have been a little bit more confusing. But that's neither here or there. So, what did it suck at? Or what did it do worse? Well, that would be underneath last year's Halloween event, the Horrorland Carnival. The reason why this was placed so down low compared to where the other ones are is simply the fact that the game locked two characters away, and it's not easy to get, the grand prize, because of this, and the content felt not fully fleshed out due to what I've stated above. It might have been because of the pandemic, but still, at the end of the day, this whole thing could have been easily fixed. Overall, this second anniversary was certainly an interesting take on a neo-90s futuristic of this choose your own adventure, give yourself goosebump book. However, either due to the current pandemic or the lack of quality control, this event doesn't come off as great as it could have been. Because of this, it's placed right in the middle of my list, to give you a little bit of a hint of where this thing lands at the end of the day. It's very disappointing to see it go so low, and I'm hoping whatever comes next is going to make it go back up. But we'll have to wait and see if they fix anything else. I have a feeling they might, but we'll play by ear. So that's it for this event. Let me know down below what you think at this whole thing. Did you agree with my list? Was there anything you disagree with? Or what is your take on this whole event overall? I'd like to hear it down below and have a good discussion. Also, with that in mind, I will throw this idea to you. Are you interested in me talking about the monetization of this game and my views on it? If that's the case, then I might make a personal video on the side that will be only for people who are interested in my take. I don't want to make it too political sound, but I like to do devil's advocate and looking both sides of the story. So if you're more interested in my view takes on what I think is going on here, then let me know down below. It'd be very much helpful. But until then, I've been Grim, and I'll be seeing you next time for whatever Goosebumps HorrorTown has in store for us. So, make sure you stay off the internet this time around. The rep crawlers might be done, but they might come back.